Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Isaac Peck. I'm the president of OREP Insurance and the publisher of Working RE magazine. As many of you know, the GSEs have put new requirements into place that are coming on February 4th. So today I'm with Paul Rowe, who's going to be talking about those requirements and what appraisers can do to stay compliant and stay out of trouble and improve the quality of their reports. If you're looking at the control panel here, you'll see the chat box. So you can ask questions and provide feedback into that chat box. We'll do our best to address any issues and also try to get to as many of your questions as we can before the end of the webinar. And the other question I want to address is that this webinar is going to be recorded. So we will be sending that out to folks if you need to leave early or you miss part of it or you just want to come back and review it later. We are going to be recording the webinar. I'm really excited to hear what Paul has to say. I know that this news from the GSEs, right, them changing their market trends requirements has been widely discussed in the appraisal community over the last month or so. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Paul.
Hey, everybody. Thanks, Isaac. Appreciate it. Yeah, so my name is Paul Rowe. I live just outside of Chicago. I've been an appraiser for about 20 years and work at True Footage. So I'm going to go over the GSE update, and then I'm really excited to demo our solution to that update and other things called TrueTracts. I wish I was excited about the update as much as I am about the software, which I think you guys are going to love. I think there's a lot of fear around the update that I don't think there needs to be. So hopefully I'm going to touch on kind of some of the key points and the guidance that they provided in their update and try to kind of dispel some of the rumors that are floating around about nonlinear time adjustments and just what we need to do and what we don't need to do. So we'll do the update. We'll kind of talk about the process that appraisers go through today, dealing with market conditions. We'll talk about the tool and how you can solve that in 5 easy steps. I'm going to do 3 demos for you guys. We'll do a urban, a suburban, and a rural property. We'll talk about some additional benefits of the tool outside of market analysis, and then we'll do a little wrap up. So let's dive in. Okay, so what you see on the left this is a chart from the GSEs. And the reason this is titled The Writing on the Wall, because the GSEs have evidence and are making it clear that appraisers aren't doing a good job of making time adjustments. There was a recent podcast that came out called Market Moves. Shout out to Mark Verrett, really good podcast, episode 21, if you guys want to check it out. Danny Wiley was on there from Freddie Mac, and he was mentioning 7% of the appraisals have time adjustments. And he said this number's been pretty consistent for years. So if you think about it, over the last several years, only 7% of appraisals that were done, there was a change in market trends for price. Find that hard to believe, and so there's some reasons why appraisers maybe aren't making the time adjustments, and we'll dig into that and we'll talk about how to solve that. But he also mentioned during COVID, the average GLA adjustment rate went down, which is weird because, right, prices across the country were going crazy, going up. And so when they looked into it, they found that appraisers were using larger comps and then adjusting them down at lower rates to hit that contract price in lieu of a time adjustment, where if they were adjusting at 150 a square foot, they were now adjusting at 40 because they couldn't bring that comp down far enough. When if they would have just analyzed the market correctly, they might have seen that, oh, the market was going up at 1.2% per month. That time adjustment would have done it. I think appraisers fear sometimes they don't make time adjustments because there's a higher risk of their report getting flagged. But I think now with them coming out with this messaging, them meeting with lenders, I think the opposite's true. I think if their tools are showing that the market is changing and you're not making time adjustments, I think those reports are going to be flagged. And I think we could start seeing a lot more revisions, which, as we know, those are going to affect our work. Okay, so let's talk about the announcement and some of the takeaways. So for the 1-unit housing trends, this is per the Fannie Mae selling guide and part of the update. The trend indicated in the appraisal report must reflect the overall movement of the market based on a minimum of 12 months of data. So when we talk about the trend, we're talking about this on page 1, property values increasing, stable, or declining. They want that to be based on a minimum of 12 months of data. which is good. That's helpful. That tells us, and we'll get into that a little bit later, of, well, yeah, but it's going up in the last 6 months, or it's going down in the last 3 months. That helps us. That gives us guidance. The other thing they mentioned was the trends must be reflective of those properties deemed to be competitive to the property being appraised. And so when we're trying to extract those trends, we want to make sure we're using competing properties to do so. Now, when it comes to the grid and actual time adjustments, they say an adjustment made to a comparable sale is based on the market change between the contract date of the comp and the effective date of the appraisal. And they go on to say the time adjustment may be different than the overall property value trend. And so you can have a situation where the market's going up overall. It was lower 12 months ago, it's higher today, but maybe there was some change in between there, and the comps are going to be adjusted differently. And we'll kind of show an example of that here in a second. So this is the chart that they provide, and this is where I think some of the maybe not miscommunication, but some appraisers think, well, you have to provide nonlinear time adjustments on every appraisal. You don't have to provide nonlinear time adjustments. However, if the market is behaving in a way that's nonlinear, if it's not increasing at the same rate every month, or it was increasing for the first 6 and now it's going down, that's when you need to do the nonlinear time adjustment. So they never specifically said the adjustment must be nonlinear, but what they want is they want that adjustment to reflect what's truly going on in the market. And so if you look in this example, you can see the overall trend is increasing. 12 months ago, it was much lower. Today, it's much higher. However, you look at comp 2, that's going to require a negative time adjustment. So overall takeaway here, I think they're pointing out a deficiency that they've identified. They're trying to provide some guidance and some clarity on kind of what they want. They're making it clear what they expect, that they expect more reports to have time adjustments when warranted. I think in order to accurately reflect the market, sometimes those will be nonlinear, sometimes they won't be. But the emphasis seems to be on show your work. Whereas before, you could mark the stable box and you didn't necessarily need a chart in your report showing why you marked stable. And so I think if you're not providing them something, again, the other thing was you have to provide this chart that's shown here in this example. You do not have to provide the chart with the comps plotted on the line, but you got to show your work. You got to show, like, why did I say stable? Why did I say increasing? The best way to do that is through a chart. And so if you don't do that, I fear that you're going to get a lot of revisions, and we know that revisions are tied to the amount of work you get. And so I strongly recommend, whether you use our tool or another tool, you analyze the market, you get a chart showing whatever trend is going on, and you put that in your report. Okay, struggle is real. So let's walk through where a lot of appraisers are today. Let's go through an example. And there's 2 questions. So in this situation, we all have to deal with the 1004 MC. What are you reconciling this overall trend to be? And what's your time adjustment going to be? And so, 1 second here, let me move. So the 1004 MC is a starting point, I think, from a lot of appraisers because it's been required. A lot of the clients have required it. And so even though the GSEs have retired this as a requirement, there's a lot of our clients that still do. And so a lot of appraisers who don't have access to technology or use tools, they're relying on this to determine their trend. So before I get into some more of this, I want to acknowledge, we all agree this is a poorly designed and flawed form. And I think that's why the GSEs retired it. And I don't recommend you using this as the basis for your trends or your time adjustments. You can fill it out when the client requires it, but I suggest adding commentary. I did this as you requested. However, here's my analysis that I did that truly reflects what's going on in the market. Okay, so this is a common data set that you have to analyze, and then you got to reconcile a trend and time adjustments. I've worked with hundreds of appraisers over the last several years, and the answers to these 2 questions of what's the overall trend and what's your time adjustment varies significantly. And so many appraisers are going to default this to stable. So you can see here, I went from 947 down to 827, back up to 905. The data set over the last year only includes about 20 properties. And so Many appraisers will default to stable. They'll say, well, it goes down, then it goes back up. And since it's not clear, I'm just going to go with stable. And now I don't have to make time adjustments. Other appraisers might say, I think it's declining because the 0 to 3 month period is lower than the 7 to 12 month period. Others might say it's increasing because the 0 to 3 month period is higher than the 3 to 6 month period, and that's the most recent trend. And then some of the appraisers I've worked with, they answer with the most common answer in appraising, it depends. And so then I ask them, well, what's it depend on? So they say, there's a lot of appraisers I work with that use Spark. A lot of you guys know what that is, but it allows you to analyze your market analysis. So they'll look at Spark and they'll look at the median sale price, they'll look at the median price per square foot chart, but sometimes the competing data set only has 10 to 15 sales over the last 12 months, and so they can't trust that trend. And so let's look at these two charts. The top chart, which is the median sale price, that's indicating the market's going up at 1.8% per month. This is the same data. The bottom chart, median price per square foot, says that that market is going down 0.8% per month. And so it's really hard to kind of understand what's going on. But if you look at the bottom chart, the far left dot, the higher one, what if that was a gut rehab? And that's why it's sold for a higher dollar per square foot. What if the most recent dot in the bottom right of that bottom chart was a C5 and was in terrible condition? The first one could be pulling that line up, the second one pulling it down. We don't know. And the problem is, because you only have so few data points, these little changes and these nuance in these properties can totally skew what's happening in the market. So limited data, conflicting indicators, it reduces the confidence that the appraiser has. What do I do? And so they're going to stop here. They're going to throw both charts in the report, and they're just going to say it's stable. Some appraisers might keep plugging away. And so now they realize they need more data. And so they're going to remove all the filters and they're going to include all the sales from the neighborhood. And so by removing all the filters, now we have a ton of sales, which is awesome. But there's a problem with this also, because Fannie Mae Selling Guide says that the 1-unit housing trends is supposed to be reflective of those properties deemed to be competitive to the property being appraised. So the question is, if I'm appraising a $300,000 market, is this $1.5 million, all these sales, are these relevant? They might be, the trend might be the same, or you might have a bifurcated market where the higher end is going up at a faster rate and the lower end may be stagnant. And so you don't really want to mix all of that stuff together. And now we have 4 indicators, which range somewhere between negative 9.6 year over year percent adjustment versus 27.6 going up year over year adjustment. And so now what do? We could reapply the filters and then let's expand the search radius out. So maybe we go out 2 to 3 miles. Now we have more data, awesome, but is it relevant data? Are those submarkets truly competing with the subject? And by that, I mean, do they have a similar relationship between home features and price? Is a 3-bed, 2-bath, 1,800 square foot home down here, down in the the lower right, selling for the same price as it is in the subject market? I can tell you based on this, absolutely not. In the northeast of that map, those properties are selling, those are completely different. The southeast, that includes Chicago, that's completely different. And so you're mixing a bunch of dissimilar data into the same data set, which can also create some problems. Okay, and so what chart do they put in the report? What adjustment rate do they use? Some appraisers then will say, well, I use sensitivity analysis in the grid on the adjusted sale prices as a tiebreaker. And so they go, well, let me look at the adjusted sale prices. If I do increasing, will that tighten the range more? If I do decreasing, would that tighten the range? And let's say that decreasing tightens the range. Well, they go, let's ignore these 3 charts that show it's increasing. Let's go with the decreasing. A couple problems with that, I would say, is typically it's not a great idea to rely on 3 to 5 data points, which are your comps for the market trend. And then also, time adjustments should really be applied prior to figuring out the feature adjustments. So you really want to normalize the sale price and then try to extract out the feature adjustments rather than try and extract out feature adjustments and then do time adjustments. Excuse me. Okay, and so after that whole process, now I got to type up the commentary that explains what I just went through and how I reconciled it. Obviously, a lot going on, not a fun process. So I think what we want is we want one definitive process that we can trust for our trends and our time adjustments. We want to be able to go through the process, and when we're done, we want to have confidence that the trend and the time adjustment are correct. So we can check that off our list of variables. So let's talk about what this tool will need to do in order to provide that for us. Okay, so it needs to take a data-driven approach to defining our market area. We don't want to use arbitrary bias and just define market areas as the busiest street to the east, west, south, and north. We want to use the data to tell us where's that subject submarket, where's that group of properties that are similar, and where do I want to look for those comps. We want a way to collect more data. We don't want to try and rely on 15 data points to determine a market trend, because the outliers can really skew that. We don't just want more data, but we need more relevant filtered data. We want that data to be competing properties in the same kind of market as what the subject's in. And then we don't need, but we want, we've learned that we want, us in testing this tool, you want trends based on the adjusted sale prices and the contract dates, not the raw sale price and the closing dates. And we'll get into that in a little bit. We want the ability to do a nonlinear trend line when it's warranted. It doesn't always have to be nonlinear, but when it's warranted, we want, when the market's behaving that way, we want to be able to see that reflected in the chart and be able to make those adjustments. We want to include pending sales so we can really fine tune what's going on most recently in the market. Let's not just rely on closed sales that really had the decision made, 30 to 60 days prior. We want an intuitive way to visualize that data, to analyze it, and then also convey the results to the client. We want an easy way to do that, not only for us as the appraiser to figure this stuff out, but we also want the client to easily kind of understand where we're at. And then it's got to be a time efficient process. If I present to you guys this tool that might be the best thing you've ever seen, which I hope it is, but it takes 25 minutes, most of you are going to hang up immediately and just get off the call. It doesn't take 25 minutes, not even close. Okay, so introducing TrueTracts. So what is TrueTracts? TrueTracts utilizes advanced analytics and machine learning to elevate how we define and analyze our markets. It delivers accurate data-driven insights visualized through intuitive heat maps and charts, enabling the appraisers to confidently reconcile the trends and time adjustments that truly reflect the current market conditions. We want to get to the truth. That was my frustration with appraising. When you're trying to figure out time adjustments, you have all these conflicting indicators, and you want to know what the truth is. What is the market really doing? And I think this tool is going to help us get there. So 5 easy steps. You're going to enter in the subject address, the effective date, the form type, the property features of the subject. You're going to then define the subject submarket. You're going to apply filters so that you ensure you're grabbing competing properties. You're going to define the broader market area and then sit back while the tool is going to automatically gather 2 to 5 times more data of competing properties. Then you go to the market analysis charts, you review those, you make some decisions based on some trends. You have the dynamic commentary that you review. You have the ability to add more commentary. And then you export. You're going to export the heat map, the charts, the commentary. 1004MC is going to be completed. All that can be exported through an integration with Total. If you're not using Total and you're using a different form filler, you're still going to get the PDF, which you could simply just put right into your report. Okay, so I want to make sure that we first, because when I go through these demos, I want to take my time, I want to explain some things, but I want you guys to see how fast this process is. So I'm going to go ahead and hit play. This is basically a time-lapse video of me running the tool. I'm going to actually use this property on the demo, but you can see here the timer there going. I'm entering filters into the property, getting my competing data set. I'm defining the submarket. I'm now reiterating based on the heat map and refining that submarket. I'm now looking at the competing properties that it grabbed, and I'm defining the overall broader market. I'm looking at the charts. I'm looking at the different data sets. I'm looking at different trends. I'm making some decisions. And at 2 minutes and 49 seconds, I hit export, and out comes the PDF. So Not every session you use is going to be 2 minutes 49 seconds. I'm used to this tool. Your first session will for sure not be 2 minutes and 49 seconds. But I did want to show you guys so that you don't get lost in the weeds as we're going through kind of some of the training on this. This is a simple tool to use that in the end is time efficient as well. Okay, how do we go to the next one? Okay, so let's do some demos. Okay, so I'm going to create a session here, and I'm going to enter in the subject property address. Entering in the subject property features. So we have a garage. Okay, and so now what's happening? It is adding all of the properties to these different clusters. It's using machine learning to try and figure out where all of the properties around the subject belong. And I guess I skipped ahead. So all of these dots here are representative of 6,000 home sales over the last 5 years in the subject's market. And so machine learning has grouped those into these different colored clusters. And the reason it's done that is we're just trying to give you a rough draft estimate of where you're going to start drawing your boundaries. So I can see the probabilities over here. There's a 75% probability it belongs to cluster 8. So I'm just going to click that. There's a small probability it belongs to cluster 6. And so overall, I know that most of these properties are similar and so behaving similar in relation to sale price and features. So this is what I'm going to use as my rough draft. I'm going to draw my subject submarket. I'm going to start broader and I'm going to come up here, over here, down. And now it wants me to apply some filters. So I want to make sure we're getting competing properties here. So I'm going to apply some filters. You can see where the subject is with the red X. So the subject's 1,456 square feet. You can see the distribution of properties there. And the idea here is I want to get a minimum of 100 properties, because what we're going to do is we're going to train a model on this data, and we don't want too few properties in that data set. But we also want them to be relatively competitive with the subject's property. So I'm going to enter those in. Let's do minus. And now down here for raw sale price, we want to get rid of some of the outliers. You can see here we got properties selling for 1.2. I think this property, I can't remember, was selling somewhere 500 or 600,000. So I'm just going to get rid of the low end, get rid of a lot of the high end, and then we're going to click create heat map. So what it's doing now is it's training a statistical model on all of the home sales that lie within the features that I just applied. And it's applying those to all these other sales. It's trying to predict the sale price. So it's taking this little dot right here and it's trying to predict the sale price based on what it learned from the model. And if that, in that case, if that prediction is 12% lower than what it actually sold for, well, it knows this is a superior market because now it's controlled for features, it's controlled for time, and it's realizing this is a superior area. So if we zoom back out, let's kind of look at where we are. So Phoenix, main Phoenix, this is North Phoenix. And if I want to get rid of these black dots real quick so we can see the colors, you can kind of see what's going on. However, I don't want to leave this as my subject submarket. This is not, clearly not all similar properties. We have some red over here, we have some blue over here, we got some red up here. And so I want to iterate on that core cluster. So I'm going to hover over here. This is SS, this is the subject submarket. Think of this, by the way, as similar to your neighborhood when you define a neighborhood. We're going to have the ability, by the way, by February 4th for you to also define a neighborhood. If you get done with your subject submarket and you don't think that's representative of your neighborhood, you can also draw a different cluster that will include only the properties in your neighborhood, and that'll be utilized to fill out the 1004MC, the top of page 2, and then on page 1, the price and the age. So, all right, getting back to this, let's redraw this core cluster. Let's zoom in here. And all of these green properties, this looks really similar. And so I'm going to expand out over here. We'll come down here, keep the interstate as the boundary here. keep the filters. We're not going to change the filters. Just going to click update the heat map. And so what it's doing again, same thing. It's taking all those properties within those boundaries, it's training a model, and then it's going out and trying to predict the sale price of all of those other dots. And this is what we're left with. So now I feel really good about this because I have my subject submarket defined. All the properties in here are mostly this dark green. Let's talk about that real quick. So dark green means that the model predicted the sale price within 3% plus or minus. And so we're considering that really similar. If it's in light green, it predicted them within 3 to 6%. If it's in blue, it was off by more than 6%. It was in a negative way, and then the red is in a positive way. So areas over here, if you were to do the analysis, let's say that you adjusted everything perfectly and you had 4 comps from here and 4 comps from here. The idea would be that these would adjust somewhere between around 20% higher than these, even after controlling for all the features because of their location. What's the white area? So there's a lot of white in here. That does not mean there's not homes there. So if we go to the satellite view and we zoom in, there's homes throughout here, right? But there is no color because there's no home sales that lie within the filters I applied. And so we only care about those homes. And so that's what we have there. Okay, so now this is where some of the magic for me happens that I think is awesome. In the original version of the tool, you had to then go draw a bunch of more circles to grab more properties, but we figured out, like with the tool, we know that this market over here is really similar to this market. There are homes that have the same home features as what I've just defined here for the subjects market, and they're selling for the same amount given those home features as the subjects market. And so when I click on this cluster down here, this is called the competing submarkets. I click that, and we can see here it's grabbed another 463 sales. This is over the last 5 years. And so you can see where those are all located. You can see there's a bunch of them over here, up here. And so now when I go to analyze the market, if we have 500 sales over 5 years, we probably have about 100 a year. But now we have another 100 because now we did this. So you have more credibility in your analysis. Now, let's say, for example, I don't think these properties up here are in the same market area as the subject. I can simply come down here, I click this button, and I constrain the market area to include only the properties that I think are within the subject submarket. And so now you can see all those other green ones have been taken out, and I'm left with this. And so this is where, by the way, the subject submarket, this is where most of your comp's going to come from. Hopefully, I pray for you guys on 95% of your properties, the comps to all come from that subject submarket. That makes things easy. But if you're dealing with a complex property and you got to go out, this is awesome because it helps you know exactly where to search. How many times have you guys went and you expanded your boundaries 2 miles, 3 miles, 4 miles? You grab what you finally find is that perfect complex property to the subject. You get it in the grid, you go through the adjustments and you go, it's adjusting 20% higher, this sucks. This helps you because you can go right to the areas where you know the properties are selling for similar and you shouldn't run into that problem. And if for whatever reason you need to use something from a red area, you have some support for what that location adjustment might be. Okay, what else? There's a lot going on here. I want to make sure I don't miss anything. We'll talk about the ROV stuff later, but I'll touch on it now. So you get an ROV from a lender. How great would it be? The lender sends you a bunch of sales from up here. Why didn't you consider these? See the heat map attached to the appraisal report. These are selling for 8% higher. It's a different submarket than my subject, and that's why I didn't use those. So simple pushback on that. Okay, so we have our submarket, we have our competing submarkets, we have the broader market area, and now let's go over and let's analyze that data. We have 1,000 properties, now we have 900 properties to analyze. So when we come to the market analysis tab, this is the second tab over here, starts out with 5 years, so we could look at 5 years of data. But there's a lot going on here that I want to talk about before we get into kind of the charts. So first of all, you can change the time period up here just by clicking that. We have the name of the chart, and then we have the indicator. And so this indicator is based on 12 months of data. And so if we go to the 1-year chart, we're looking at what was the market here versus what is the market today or as of the effective date. And so that's what this indicator is telling us. That's going to inform what is the box that we're going to check on page 1. Now, we have the ability to change that. We want to give you control that if you want to consider this down 2.2% year over year relatively stable, you can do that. And when you change it to relatively stable, you'll see the color changes up there. And this is just saying I'm considering 2.2% relatively stable. I wouldn't suggest that. I would suggest going with the trend because you're going to have your time adjustments down here for each of the comps. And we'll get into that in a minute. I also want to point out, you'll have the ability to include or not include any of these charts in your report. We have the dynamic commentary down here. So we're spelling out how many home sales over the last 12 months, whether you used your market area or whether you just used the subject submarket or whether you defined your own neighborhood. That's dynamic and will change based on that. We're saying that it decreased from this amount to this amount, what that implied change is, and then you get to reconcile that. Right here, you'll see these little tooltips are scattered throughout. The tooltips are basically telling you how we're doing things and trying to help you understand what's going on in the background. In this case, it's just showing you if there's less than a 2% change, we're going to default to relatively stable. If it's more than 2%, we're going to default to whatever it's increasing, decreasing, or what's going on there. You also have the ability to add commentary. So if you want to append this and add some more commentary, clarifying, adding on to, you can do that. You have control over which data sets you're using. And so if I only want to use the subject submarket, it's reloading based on only these 516 home sales. And so I can look at, here's what's going on with just this first group, then I can add in, and that's what's going on there. The other thing, I'm going to stay here on the sale price trend because I think this is really cool too. If you notice over here, we are using the adjusted sale price. So we're using a GAM model. GAM is, and I have another training video that's going to be out either by the end of the day or tomorrow that I suggest you guys watch. I'll dig into this a little bit more. But the GAM model is a generalized additive model. And it's a way that we use to basically account for all the features and make adjustments to all the different features and then plot them on the chart. And so there's something really cool that, let's see, maybe I should just, I'm going to see if I can touch on that really quick because I think it's relevant. Okay. So if you guys look here, we did a test. So we plotted the raw sale price on this top chart, and then we plotted the adjusted sale price on the bottom chart. And you can see here, the dots are more scattered throughout. This green area on the chart, the green band is the confidence interval. And so it's how confident the tool is in the trend. And you can see how that confidence gets extremely tighter when you have more data and when you adjust, or not when you have more data, but when you've adjusted that data for differences. The other really cool thing that we learned here was, in this case, when we're not adjusting the sale prices, there's a trend that's actually going up. When we adjusted those sale prices, the trend's actually going down over the last 6 to 9 months. And so I actually dug into this just to try and figure out on a $600,000 home sale, this market was going up at 3 to 4% over the last 6 months, a total of 3 to 4%. And if I adjusted that up versus I use this chart and I would have adjusted it, this was 4 to 5% down. We were looking at a difference between like 570 and 630 of sale price. That's a big difference in an indicator, and that's going to affect your opinion of value. And so I show you that just to show you kind of the power of adjusting those sale prices prior to plotting them on the line. Okay, what else are we doing? We are plotting them based on contract date instead of the close date. You know, we all, like, most appraisers realize that when you adjust your comps, you should be adjusting them based on the contract date. That's the meeting of the mind. That's when the decision was made about the price. But most appraisers were left with a tool that plots sales based on close date. And so we are plotting these based on the contract date, which is the meeting of the minds. And I think that is a much better depiction of what's going on. And what happens when you do that is, we don't have this in yet. It'll be here by February 4th. We're going to have pending sales. And so The reason we want to plot pending sales and consider those is those are the most recent indicators of what's going on in the market. They're under contract. Now, we don't know what they're closing for. However, we just happen to have a really cool tool that will allow us to figure out what's that ratio and how do we predict what that property is going to close for. And so we can utilize this information, which we are, to adjust these pending sales based on what we can predict that they're going to sell for. If you want to know more information on kind of what's going on here, please hover over this. This gives you a lot of good information about what this red trend line, the green interval, and all of that. Let's go down here. So if I'm just looking at if all my comps sold in the last 12 months, I don't really care about 5 years. It's kind of cool to see what's going on and see the different trend. But when it comes to what's going in my report, I only care about the time period with which my comps sold between. And so this is going to give you that information to adjust your comps. So what this does, we don't know what your comps are, and so we can't tell you each comp. But what we can tell you is if comp 1 went under contract in July, there's a negative 3.8% adjustment that you should apply to that comp. If you had sales that sold over 12 months ago, let's say you had a couple that sold 18, 20 months ago, and you come down here, once you change that, now you have that available and it goes all the way out to 5 years. It will show you all those different adjustments. Okay. I think what else? Okay, so let's go on to supply. We have the supply chart. You can see that here. You have the decision that you get to make at the end. We have the dynamic commentary, and we're considering this a shortage. You hover over this. We're considering anything under 4 months of supply to be a shortage, 4 to 6 in balance, 6+ oversupply. I could not find a definitive source from Fannie, from Freddie, USPAP, any of that on what these numbers should be. I think it's going to be market by market. And so we're doing our best to try and save you a little time by guessing at what it is. But ultimately, you're in control of this. And if you feel that 1.6 months is in balance, you can change it to in balance. Marketing time, we're doing the marketing time. And by the way, your decision here, and then what this number is, those are going to check those boxes on page 1 for you. So in this case, it would check I think it says under 3 months or less than 90 days. It'll check that box for you. We have the sale to final list price ratio. This is awesome to adjust your pending sales. If you have a contingent or pending sale that's comps 5 or 6, you can use this to extract a list to sale price ratio adjustment. You can see here some additional information. We're removing out the outliers from the chart. It's not affecting the analysis or the calculations. We're leaving them in for that. We're just removing them from the chart because what we found is days on market's a good example. We would have a dumb comp that when it had 2,000 days on market. Well, when you have to reduce this scale and you have a dot way up here, everything else just looks at the bottom. And so we do that for you so you can see the trend better, and for the client so they can really understand what's going on without the outliers skewing that. We also have the original listed sale price. So if you have active listings, it's comps 5 or 6. This is a really good metric to use to adjust those. Distress sales coming soon, and concessions, depending on your market, we'll be coming out with those, and we'll have a lot of that stuff available before February 4th. I should have mentioned this before. This is in beta. The idea is this will be out of beta by February 4th, hopefully a little bit sooner than that, but it'll be out by February 4th. Okay, so I've just done the first demo, the first property. Let me just run through one more real quick. I could see I'm pretty much going over. So let me just do one more demo real quick, and we'll kind of try and speed through this. This is a suburban property. This is in my neighborhood. So this is a northwest suburb of Chicago. And so again, I'm going to scroll down here. I see 21. I'm going to draw my initial subject submarket boundaries. I'm going to apply some filters. 600,000 to 1.4 million. Just want to get rid of some of the outliers. Again, the heat map right now is being created, and you can see here, this is really cool. So let me zoom out real quick. So Chicago's down here, and you can see this suburb, and then you see all this red. This is the North Shore, and then you see these other really cool pockets. More on those in a minute, but I want to refine my subject submarket, so I'm just going to quickly take the information it gave me. By the way, if you see Edison Park over here, this is Chicago. It doesn't know city limits. It doesn't know zip codes. It doesn't know census tracts. It doesn't know school districts. But the tool learned and figured out this boundary between Park Ridge and Chicago and the change in school districts and everything. It figured out like, oh, there is a difference in price. And so I'm just going to refine those boundaries, replace that heat map. And now I feel really good about this. I zoom out and I want to address the grabbing of these additional properties in these other markets. And so I have 224 over 5 years, but now I get to add in all these others. Now, you might think like, why would you use, this is 10 miles south and this might be 15 miles, or I have no idea how many miles, but it's a 20-minute drive. But what's really cool is Park Ridge is very similar in housing and price and features of the neighborhoods to Elmhurst and Glen Ellen and Arlington Heights. And why? Because there's similar distances from downtown. There's a commuter train that goes right down into the center of the city. There's shops and restaurants in each of those towns around this area. There's walking distance. And so to the person who says, I'm going to move to Chicago, I want to live in the suburbs, I want to live in an area where I can, I work downtown, so I want to be able to walk to the train, I want to walk to shops and restaurants, good school district. Mr. Realtor, show me some properties. I think that people, the same realtor could show someone in Park Ridge, Glen Ellen, Arlington Heights, Elmhurst. There's a bunch of homes built in the early 1900s, and there's a bunch of new construction and everything in between, and the same thing here. They all have those similar downtowns. And so, but what I would say is the city of Chicago is not in my market area, because I think people either want to live in the suburbs, or they want to live in the city. And so I would constrain my market area. I don't want those city properties, but I do want the suburban ones. And so I can quickly constrain my subject's broader market area to include only those here. And so now I just have the suburban properties, and now I have a ton more data to analyze. Okay, we are getting close to time. I did not time this out as good as I should have, so let me speed through. So let's reiterate here, present. Heat map features. So subject submarket, it's illustrating to the reader that you've defined your submarket area in a data-driven and unbiased way. Most of your comps are going to come from here. And it's going to quickly show where to look for comps and where not to look for comps, which will probably save you time. It's going to automatically gather 2 to 5 more data competing properties, which is going to lead to a much more credible and reliable trends and time adjustments that you can trust. There's additional benefits you're going to get beyond just that market analysis. So we're going to have a total integration by the end of the month, and we're going to have the PDF export. That's going to fill out the top of page 1, the top of page 2, 1004 MC with commentary. That's all going to be done prior to February 4th. It's going to help you with the comp selection for competitive or complex properties. ROV defense, we already touched on that. And then this is really cool too. So great data set to fuel Synapse. We're working on a data integration, TBD on when that's going to be done. But the idea here is you spent a couple of minutes grabbing really good similar data and curating that. And we're going to have the ability to just kind of push that into Synapse, which is going to fuel those adjustments. And whenever I've seen issues on a Synapse session where an appraiser is like, it's giving me bad results, I don't like this. It's usually because they uploaded 72 properties and it's not able to tease out the adjustment. When you end up with 500 properties in Synapse, it gives you some really cool results. And so little plug for Synapse as well, but this will be a great tool that will kind of talk to Synapse, and I'm excited about that. Last takeaway, the level of rigor that goes into using TrueTracts to analyze a market should give you the confidence that you need to utilize the trends and the time adjustments derived and improve the quality and credibility of your report. Last slide, Beta. So this could be beta until around February 4th, hopefully a little bit sooner. That's when all the integration and the report generation and all that will come out. Today, access. 47% of the country has access today. We have all the home sales going back 5 years, canceled, expired, all that for 47% of the country. We'll have another 40 to 45% of the country will have access in March. To sign up, once you go to this link here, it's free right now. If you're not in the coverage area, which I'll show you that link here in a minute, but if you're not in the coverage area today, Spark will be updated to handle the nonlinear time adjustments by the end of January. So Brandon, it looks really cool. I saw the demo. So Brandon's going to release a video, I believe, on Monday showing you what that's going to look like. So if you don't have access to TrueTracts yet, but you need something before February 4th, and you're in a Spark market, you will be able to do that in Spark. Office hours. I'm going to have office hours every day at noon Central Time. And so there is a link you can either do, you can go here and you can grab that link and you just jump right onto a meeting and you can share your screen and we can work through some problems. There's a question mark on the TrueTracts tool. I'll show you here in a second that you can grab that link from right from within the tool. And then there is the coverage. So if you go to truefootage.tech/tools/TrueTracts, you can sign up here. You can see the coverage here. Anything in green, those are properties that are active today, or those are MLS areas that are active today. Anything with an asterisk, which is going to be a lot of these other ones, those are going to be ready in March. And here's the question mark at the top. So all of those links are here. Here's the link to jump on the office hours. This will be updated probably by tomorrow with a more in-depth training video. Yeah, I mean, that's it. And I guess, I don't know if we have time for questions, but if we do, happy to answer some questions.
Yeah, thanks for the great presentation, Paul. The one of the questions that I hear several times in the question box is, what about rural areas or places where there's not a lot of data? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, how much time do we have? An extra 5 or 10, Isaac?
You can take
I
as
should
long
ask.
as you like, Paul, and people, if people need to leave, they can leave. I think that
All right, cool.
I'll stay with you.
All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a rural property real quick. Let's see here, hang on. I'm going to do this on the new tool. This is not an area that's within that 47%, but so I'm using an older version of the tool, but I had one ready and I started running out of time, so I wasn't going to do it, but let's do it. So we're going to travel to Whitesboro, Texas. Whitesboro, Texas. And let me enter in features. So that is going to be save and classify. Okay, so this is a town of, this is like 70 miles north of Dallas. There are population 4,181. And so if we zoom out here, you can see Dallas-Fort Worth down here, and we are in this little tiny town. So the tool is going to work better in urban and suburban markets. It just is. But the good news is using this tool in a rural market is way better than whatever you're doing today. I promise you that. And so it's not perfect. It's going to take a little bit of work sometimes, but it works. So 66%, it belongs to cluster 6. I'm going to click on cluster 6. Most of those properties are right in there. And so I'm going to draw my initial subject submarket so that I grab those properties. And now I need to apply filters. I only have 442 over 5 years to start, and I'm dealing with a house built in the early 90s. I don't think there's a ton of those. And so we got some stuff going on here, and I picked that on purpose. So we're going to be a little bit more liberal, though, when we apply our filters. And so let's do 1,300 to 2,200. We'll do 6,000 to 30,000. Good for 1 to 3. Let's see. 1960 to 2010. 200 to 500. Okay, so the model's being trained. Now, as you notice, I only have 70 properties that it's being trained on, which is not ideal, but we're in a rural market and sometimes that's the best you could get. Oh crap. Looks like the old version of the tool is not pulling up the heat map. All right, I'm going to try it one more time. Sorry about that, but this is not the production version that you guys will have. Oops, wrong one. I'll tell you what, and rather than retype all this stuff back in, the demo video that I did this property in a demo in the training video that's going to come out either later today or tomorrow, and I go through that. So just to answer the question, this does work in rural properties. You got to play with that subject cluster, and what you're going to find is a lot of times you're dealing with 50 properties instead of the minimum 100 that we want to train that model. So you expand that initial subject submarket bigger. Because think about it, if you're 70 miles from Dallas, is there a difference if you're 70 miles or 80? Like, 10 miles west of you or 5 miles east? Well, usually when you're in a rural market, there's not a lot of locational issues. And so just be broader with your boundaries and be broader with your filters. And what's really cool is you may only have 72 properties to train the model, but then it goes and finds all those other properties, and then you end up with 300 or 400. So it does work in rural markets. This exact property, 217 Center Street, you'll see a demo of that in the video that we're going to post. Any other questions?
Yeah, this is the last question. We've got a lot of questions here, Paul, but I'm just going to ask one more. A couple people have asked kind of what is the data based on? Like, where are you getting your data?
We're getting it from an MLS feed from a data provider. So we're getting a direct feed to the MLS, which is our first provider is only covering 47% of the country, which is that's why we have, but we have another data provider. We are currently ingesting all of those millions of home sales in those other markets over the last 5 years, cleaning those using our Spark engines to make sure it's good data. And that's why that group will not be ready till March. But these are all the sales and expireds and cancels from the MLS.
Okay, and for those appraisers that want to learn more about this, where should they go?
They should sign up for the tool. And then if you want to learn more, you can go to truefootage.tech/tools/TrueTracts. And you can learn more about the tool there. We'll be posting a 5-minute video, each is going through training. I go through 3 examples and demos, including the rural one. And if you guys got a lot of questions, I'm going to be on tomorrow at noon, the office hours. And so if you guys sign up for the tool, when you get in it, just click on the little question mark right there. You click that little link. It will take you to the Google Meet. It'll say over here that Paul Rowe's in the call, and you just click join now, and you can share your screen, and we can work through and work through any questions you have.
All right. Well, thanks, Paul, for taking the time for the presentation today. We had nearly 500 people signed up at the peak here, so this is definitely a really hot topic for appraisers, and we're looking forward to seeing everything that TrueTracts can do. I know we're going to be doing another webinar on this topic later this month, so thanks everyone for attending, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody.